The Baseball by the Yard podcast, episode number 6, 7 Habits of Highly Effective Infielders. Hey folks, listen up. Baseball has a problem. On the positive side, new technology allows players and coaches to see, measure, and collect data on just about anything we want. But ask anybody who has been around the game for a while and they will tell you that something is missing. What I think is missing are the finer points of the game. Field awareness, the mental side, the approach, the ability to know when and how to make adjustments, baseball IQ, and the ability to think for yourself on the baseball field. Those things you can't measure, but if players don't have those skills, their days in the game of baseball are numbered. Do you agree? If so, then you've come to the right place. Welcome to the Baseball by the Yard podcast, the podcast dedicated to teaching all those finer points of the game to players and coaches. I'm Coach Bob McCreary, former professional player and coach. Let's start the show, and let's start changing how we teach the game. All right, welcome back, everybody. Good morning. Actually, it could be good afternoon or good evening, whenever it is you are consuming your podcast. So whatever time of day you're listening to me, thanks so much for stopping by. I appreciate your time, and hope I can pass on some valuable information to you. Before we get into today's episode, I want to pass on some news about the website and so forth. First off, if you are listening to this on my YouTube channel, this will be the last podcast that I post to my YouTube channel. YouTube really is not a platform for podcasting. It's video, obviously. And the reason why I had posted my first 6 podcasts really is just to let my almost 5,000 subscribers know about them and hopefully get them interested in the podcast and hopefully get over to some of those other platforms where the podcast is listed. Things like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Stitcher, Spotify, and there may be 1 or 2 other ones. So I'm going to leave my YouTube channel for my video, and I will be starting up some more videos in the near future when the weather clears up a little bit here in Pennsylvania. And so I'll save my YouTube channel for the videos. And so in the future, if you subscribe or follow on any of those other podcast providers, you will be notified when new podcasts are posted. And of course, I'll put them on my website, baseballbytheyard.com as well. Also, some good news. I'm hoping in the next week or so that I'm able to finish an ebook that I'm currently making. I every now and then I'll get emails, and most of those emails are from coaches that are just transitioning into the larger field. So they have maybe coached their son's team in Little League, and they're about to transition into the larger fields. And of course, the dynamics change, particularly on defense. And so I get a lot of questions from these coaches asking about, hey, you know, now that I'm on the big field and the fence is so far back for these kids, you know, what is the defensive positioning if, let's say, a ball's hit in the gap? Like, what do the second baseman and the shortstop do? You know, when you're on a Little League field, you don't really have to worry about extensive cutoffs and double relays and things like that. But when you do get onto a bigger field, that does become an issue. So I'm putting together an ebook on a whole bunch of defensive positioning things for coaches. And so stay tuned for that. It'll be posted on my website, but I will also talk about it on future podcasts as well. Okay, so I think that's all the news I needed to pass along. So yeah, today's podcast, I'm going to focus on infielders. And of course, the title I kind of stole from Stephen Covey. If you're a fan of any of his books, I think he started off with the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which was a national bestseller. And then he branched off and did a lot of other offshoot of those books. I think I saw one, 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens and so forth. So kind of took that title and figured, you know what, let me do something for infielders. And so when I come back, we'll take a look at 7 things that I think are important for infielders to do. Now, if you've been a follower of Baseball by the Yard with my blog posts and videos and things like that, when I do these types of content, when I list a lot of things, typically I try to find topics that are not often talked about. things that you may have heard, some of the things you pass on to your players, but I try to throw in some things that, or at least explanations of things that maybe you haven't heard of before. So when we come back, I'll give you my 7 things that I see a lot and I wish a lot of infielders would know. And so if you're a coach out there dealing with infielders, these are 7 things that hopefully you can pass on to your infielders and make them a little more aware of some things going around them, increase that IQ. And of course, that's what this podcast and the website are all about. All right, so when we come back, we'll get to it. We'll list the 7, starting with number 1. I'll see you in a bit. Okay, so let's get to the 7 habits of highly effective infielders. Okay, so these are in no particular order, but these are just things that I've noticed that premier infielders either do or pay more attention to. And so we get a wide variety of things here. So let me start off with number 1. So the first one I call the split step, and more importantly, the timing of the split step. So I don't even know if there is a name for this in baseball, but I want you to picture a tennis player for a second. So if you watch TV and you watch some of the tennis tournaments out there, and someone is waiting for a serve, okay, what you're going to see typically with a professional tennis player is that they're going to be back behind the court waiting for the serve, because those guys, they're in like the 120 mile an hour range when it comes to their first serve. I think even women now average over 100 miles an hour with their first serve. So anyway, if you've watched tennis, you've probably seen the tennis player who was waiting, getting ready for the serve. And they are back behind the court, and their feet are wide, and they're bent over, usually swaying back and forth, twirling a tennis racket, waiting for the person to serve on the other side of the court. Now, the timing of this is what you're going to see with tennis players is that when the server throws the ball up, what you'll generally see is the person who is waiting for the serve will sometimes jump. Like they'll come up on their toes, sometimes leave the ground, and then land again on the bottom of their feet. So their feet are wide, and then they go up on their toes, and then they land on the balls of their feet. Now, if you pay close attention, tennis players tend to do that particular thing with exact timing. So the fact is, when they land after coming up on their toes, and they land on the ball of their feet, they do that pretty much exactly at the same time that server hits the ball with the tennis racket. Now, this is where physics comes into play. Okay, so you probably heard of Isaac Newton and his law of motion, or various laws of motion. So one of them, the first one actually, is pretty much, and I'm paraphrasing, that an object in motion wants to stay in motion, an object at rest wants to stay at rest, something along those lines. So basically, if you're trying to hit a serve that's 120 miles an hour, and you're standing still when that ball is hit, the ball's going to go by you. It's going to take you too long to get moving. So the tennis players will do what they call a split step. So they not only widen their feet, but they leave the ground and then land again just as that ball is being hit. And what that does is that not only gets them in a very athletic position, but their body is moving slightly because they are landing on the balls of their feet. And so when the ball is hit to their left or right, it is easier for them to break one way or the other in order to return that serve. Well, infielders work the same way. Now, a lot of infielders are taught, even at the younger ages, to kind of step forward on the pitch. But what I tend to find is a lot of infielders at all levels, this isn't just Little League kids, but at all levels, don't do that split step properly. And more importantly, their timing is off. Okay, so similar to the tennis player, if I'm too late, okay, let's say I do come forward as a shortstop. I step forward on the pitch and I come up on my toes and then land. And let's say I do that process too late. Now, when I say too late, basically in baseball, here's how it works. There's an area kind of like the contact point where a batter is going to swing the bat, and there's a space at which he's probably going to make contact with the ball, that contact zone. It's maybe like a foot area where the bat is going to meet the ball, kind of right out in front of home plate, so to speak. So basically, as an infielder, you are timing it, so when you watch the pitch coming in from the pitcher, your timing, you need to time it so that when you land on that split step, you are landing on the balls of your feet at this exact same time that ball is crossing that hitting zone. And so what I find is most infielders, if they do that step, they're either too early or too late. So if I'm too late, then very often the infielder is going to be caught in the air or way up on their toes when the ball is hit. And so their body is going to have to land first before they break left or right. So their timing is a little bit off. Now, with some infielders, they do it way too early. And I think this is the one that I tend to see more often with infielders. They will step forward on the pitch, and then they're actually waiting there as the ball is crossing the hitting zone. The problem is what I mentioned before about Newton's first law of motion, that if you are standing still, it's going to be harder to get in motion. And so getting there too early is going to make you flat-footed, and you're going to be at a stationary point, which is going to make it harder for you to get going. Getting there too late, obviously, is you're going to get caught up in the air, or you're not ready to break left and right, and that's going to cause a problem as well. So I wish I could find it, but the other day I saw on some social media, someone had posted a little video, and there was a camera that was on a third base side, and in the view of the camera was the third baseman, and then in the background was the shortstop. And I forget what major league team it was, but it was like a 5-second video, and basically it showed both the shortstop and the third baseman do that split step, and it was choreographed perfectly. So you've seen like dance moves, couples dancing and so forth, and they do the exact same thing at the exact same time. Both of these fielders did their split step the same way with the exact same timing. And that's one of the marks of a good infielder, is that not only do they move forward and they do that split step, but their timing is perfect. And if all four of the infielders behind the pitcher are doing it, it should be choreographed where they're doing the exact same thing at the exact same time. So the first habit is making sure that you have that split step down, the footwork, but also, more importantly, the timing of it. And highly effective infielders tend to master that quicker than the average infielder. All right, now the second one involves your pre-inning throws. And this is something that I try to tell my infielders, even when they were younger, when I was coaching my son's team, back when he was 8 years old, all the way up through high school and college and pro and so forth. Anytime I worked with infielders, I always gave them some recommendations on what to do with their pre-inning throws, because too often players really don't place a lot of importance on those throws. So typically, here's why this is important. Our bodies are creatures of habit. And so very often, I mentioned this before in a previous podcast, that in stressful situations, your body is going to revert to the level that it is mastered. And so it becomes imperative that everything you do, whether it's hitting, base running, fielding, throwing, you are mechanically sound every single time you do it. Because if you can train your body to do it correctly every single time, then when you are put in a game situation and the stress gets amped up, your body is going to go back to what it knows how to do. And if you've taught your body over and over and over to do it correctly, that's what it's going to revert to. So the problem with kind of messing around with your pre-inning throws and really not throwing the ball to first base the way you would in a game, your footwork is off, you're lazy. Problem is you're teaching your body bad habits. And in a stressful situation, last inning, game on the line, balls hit to you, your body, unfortunately, is going to go back to what has been taught to do. And in some cases, it's been taught to do a lot of bad habits. So pay more attention to your pre-inning throws. Make them a little more valuable. Now, I understand that it's a long season, so I never wanted my infielders really to just air out every single infield throw prior to the inning, okay? Because you want your arm to last the whole season. But there are some things that you can do to kind of have a healthy balance between mechanically sound but also saving your body and your energy. So, for example, when I was a shortstop in professional baseball, very often I would go out there early in the game, let's say first inning, second inning, and I would try to get 3 throws before the inning, which is pretty typical prior to an inning. So what I would do is my first throw, I would stand up on the grass, very much like I'm playing in on the grass, like with a runner on third base. The first baseman, prior to the inning, would throw me a ground ball. And being in on the grass, I got a chance to see what the infield grass was like. What were some of the hops off the grass? In case later on in the game, I would have to play in, I wanted to have a pretty good idea of what that grass was like. Did it skip? Was it the grass really short and so forth? And so taking that really short throw prior to the inning helped me prepare for in case I had to play in on the grass later in the game. And of course, I have a very short throw to first base. And then the second throw, I would play kind of halfway back because during a game, typically I'd have my heels on the grass. I'm playing back on the dirt. But on a routine ground ball, I would be charging, and I would pretty much be catching that ball about halfway. And so my second throw, I would take about halfway. I want to see that ball bounce on the grass after the first baseman throws it, and then I want to see the ball hit the dirt once or twice, because that's pretty much what's going to happen when the game starts. I want to see how that ball reacts once it comes off the grass and hits the dirt. And I'm going to mimic that kind of average throw that's about halfway in the dirt there to first base. So I'm getting my arm used to that throw as well. Now, if I had a third throw, what I typically would do is I would go way back in the hole at shortstop, and I'd be in the outfield grass. And when the first baseman threw me the ball for my last pre-inning throw, I would wait for the ball to come all the way to me, and I wouldn't charge it at all. And so I'd pick it up, and this one, I would air out the first base for a couple reasons. First off, I want to get my arm used to that throw because I never know when I'm going to have to go in a hole, backhand it, and really air out one to first base. And so if I haven't done that prior to the play, my arm is not going to be ready for that throw. So I want to make sure my arm is ready for the distance, and I get kind of used to making that throw at least once, hopefully in the early parts of the game. Now, here's another reason why that throw specifically is important. So let me tell you a little story here. So when I was playing in high school and then college, there was a scout that started coming to my games, and he was just an area scout for the Pirates, and I think my father knew him or got to know him because my father was often at the games. And I remember one time my dad was talking to me because it was at one of my college games at Villanova, and he was talking to that scout. And they got to talking about a variety of things, and my dad was asking him, like, what are some things you'd like to see in a player, that kind of thing. And the scout said, well, what I really want to see is a ball hit in the hole so I can see Bob's arm. Now, the problem with that is you could play shortstop for an entire week and never have a ball hit in the hole. Now, that poses a problem if you have college coaches and scouts that are specifically there to see you. And as a player who wants to play at a higher level, you can't allow a coach or a scout to leave a field and not know things like your passion for the game, and in this case, your arm strength. So when I heard that story, I made it a point every single game, early in the game, first inning, second inning, whatever, is I would always take a couple throws from as far back in that hole as possible, and I would air it out. Because if there was someone there who's watching, and there always is at the college and professional levels, there's always scouts there, I want every scout to know what my arm was like when I was throwing a ball from deep shortstop, because I may not get one of those in a game. And so I didn't want them to leave not knowing my arm strength. So if you're a player and you're looking to play at the college level or beyond, take that in consideration, okay? Now, of course, like I said, you have to kind of balance here. I don't want my infielders airing out throws to first base. So it doesn't mean you have to throw it 100%, but your footwork needs to be perfect and your arm angles and so forth. You want to mimic that as much as possible because, like I said, in stressful situations, you're going to go back to what your body knows. And if you've taught your body to do it the right way, it's going to keep doing it the right way. All right, so that's number 2. Now, number 3, premier infielders always keep their eyes or get their eyes onto the target before they release the ball. So I see a lot of young infielders not do this. So what I mean by that is this. So picture someone who's coming forward to field a ground ball, and they're looking the ball into their glove because that's what you want to do. And as they're transitioning from fielding to throwing, their eyes come up, and eventually their eyes are going to pick up, say, first base. But what I find with a lot of infielders is that they're too slow with their eyes. And if you were to slow down their fielding motion in video, what you'll often see is that the ball is released from their hand to throw to first base slightly before their eyes have locked in to first base. And if you watch premier infielders and you slow it down, you will find that immediately after catching the baseball, their eyes come up and lock in on that target, and then they release the ball. Now, that's not a little trivial thing. Your accuracy will improve if you can pick up that target before you let go of the ball. And now that you know that, if you pay attention to infielders that you watch, you will notice many, many infielders that do not do this. They're a slight second late getting their eyes on the target, and they actually let go of the baseball before their eyes are locked on. So no matter what position you're playing, but especially in the infield, no matter what the play is, a routine ground ball, ball in the hole, ball up the middle, double play, whatever it is you're doing, your eyes have to lock onto your target before your hand lets go of the ball. You would think that that would be basic and easy, but now that I told you about it, pay attention and you will see a lot of infielders not do that. But that will significantly improve your accuracy if your eyes are locked into your target before you actually release the ball. Okay, so the first one is that a split step, and more importantly, the timing. The second habit is making sure your pre-inning throws are locked in and considering all the things that I mentioned. The third thing was get your eyes locked on the target before you let go of the ball. All right, now habit number 4 is premier athletes don't depend on their teammates. Now, I've talked about this in a number of different platforms, in written form and video and so forth, and I might have even mentioned it in a previous podcast. But infielders especially, as you get older, the game gets faster. And I know a lot of coaches will tell their infielders, to communicate, give reminders, and that's great stuff. You certainly want to do that. However, there are many times in the course of a game where the game happens too fast that you cannot rely on your teammates to tell you what to do or to where to be. You just have to know where to be and know what to do. So, for example, if I'm a cutoff man, okay, I do not need the third base. Let's say ball's hitting the right field gap and I'm the shortstop and I'm going to be the cutoff man between right field and third base. I can't afford to have that third baseman tell me left, go right, line up. No, okay, he's got enough to worry about as a third baseman. It's my job to know where I am on the field at all times. And so great infielders, it's nice to have your teammates help you and remind you of things, but you should not depend on them. They should not be responsible for determining where you need to be and at what time. You're responsible for where you are. The bases, all that stuff has not moved in over 100 years, so you need to know exactly where you are. Do not rely on your teammates to tell you where to be. That is your job. And so premier infielders take it upon themselves to always know where they are and not have to rely on their teammates. Okay, now the fifth one involves the top hand. So little kids are often taught that on a ground ball, of course, your glove hand is out, okay, in front of you, fielding that ground ball, and basically your palm is going to be facing the sky when you are fielding that ground ball. And that top hand is you have your hand over top of your glove with your palm facing down. So the glove hand is facing up, top hand is facing down. You catch the ball with two hands. When the ball goes in your glove, that top hand just comes straight down on the ball, and you catch the ball with two hands. So not only is that correct fundamentally, but there's something that goes on with the brain here. Now this is especially the case with little kids. I just got another email the other day from a parent whose son is afraid of the baseball in some ways. And that's a hard thing to break. Now, all it takes is for a young infielder to catch a bad hop in the face, in the neck, in the chest, and that kid experiences that pain, and then very often it's hard for them to keep their head down. And that's because the brain, every time you get hit, your brain says, okay, I'm going to try not to let that happen again. And so it becomes a reflex. Now, here's where the top hand can help those kids. It calms your brain down. So, for example, if I'm going after a ground ball and I just stick my glove out, let's say I don't even use my second hand, I just use my glove. I stick my glove out. My brain instinctively knows that there's nothing in between that baseball and my nose, okay? And so there's a part of all of our brains that is always in survival mode. And it's almost like our 24-hour radar system that's always looking around, scanning our environment for threats. It's even outside of our awareness, okay? If it senses a threat, alarm bells start to go off, okay? And we get a weird feeling and so forth. So in that situation, if there is nothing in between that baseball and my nose, alarm bells start to go off in our head, and our body says, okay, I'm going to get your head out of there. And by reflex, you're going to turn your head away, you're going to pull your head up, and it's nature's way of trying to protect you. Now, here's where the top hand comes in. If you take that top hand and put it over your glove, there is now something between that baseball and my nose. My brain sees that my hand is kind of in line with the baseball. Not exactly, because I need to see the ball, of course, but there is something between that baseball and my nose. And so just putting your hand out in front of you as a top hand when you're fielding ground balls calms your brain down. And so alarm bells don't start to go off because your brain says, okay, it's going to be fine. Even if it's a bad hop, my hand is there, and I have the ability to knock the ball down, deflect it, do whatever. But there's something in front of my face. And so that calms that survival side of our brain down. And for young kids, very often they're much more likely to be able to keep their head down. And so premier infielders tend to do that, not only for fundamental reasons to catch the ball with two hands, but it's also done to calm that brain, especially when little kids are playing on bad fields and they're getting a lot of bad hops. If you want kids to be less fearful of the ball, make sure they're catching the ball with two hands so that that bare hand is out in front of their face, and that brain will sense that it is a lot more dangerous, and hopefully they'll keep their head down and their eyes on the ball just a little bit longer. Okay, so number 6. Sixth habit of highly effective infielders is keeping your head behind the baseball. So if you watch little kids, let's say you have a little kid who's covering second base and a throw's coming to second base. Very often you'll see the young kids stand straight up in the air. They're nice and tall. And then let's say the throw is at their waist. They'll reach down and their glove will be at their waist, but their eyes will still be nice and tall. Now the problem with that is the ball is coming to the glove on one angle and their eyes are seeing the ball from a different angle. If you want to improve your ability to catch the baseball and do things much quicker, try to always get your head behind the glove or behind the ball. So let's say I am that shortstop and that catcher throws down to second base on a steal, and it's going to be a waist-high throw. What you'll notice premier infielders do is they will bend their knees and their head will pretty much be on the same level as the ball. So it's always their eyes and then their glove and then the baseball. It's always almost like a straight line between those three things. It's always eyes, glove, ball. If I stand straight up and my eyes are where my head is and my glove is down by my waist, then I've formed like a triangle. My eyes have an angle to the ball has an angle to my glove, and then the glove is up to my eyes. So I have a pretty significant sized triangle there, and I don't want to do that when I field. Highly effective infielders, no matter what the play is, they always try to get their head behind the baseball. If someone's throwing the baseball to them, they will bend their knees, reach their glove out, and you have the ball, the glove, and their eyes pretty much on that same line. Like I said before, if they're making a tag, same deal. They bend those knees, and their head is always behind the ball. So that's an important skill, and the quicker kids can learn that at a younger age, the more likely they're going to catch the ball, but they can also be much more athletic because they're not standing straight up and down. So as a general rule, Keep your head behind the baseball. All infielders will have to do that, and it will make them much more successful when it comes to catching. Okay, so the last one is a phrase that I heard probably from the moment I picked up a baseball, and that is, the ball is coming to me. Now, it would be nice if you're a coach and you look out on that field and you can crawl into everybody's head, and it would be nice to hear every one of their heads say to themselves, the ball is coming to me. Of course, that's usually not the case, especially with young kids, but effective infielders on every single pitch of the game are telling themselves, on this pitch, this ball is going to be hit to me. Of course, if you're an infielder and you can do that, then you're never going to be surprised if the ball is hit to you. And I can't tell you how many times I've been coaching in games and a ball is hit to one of my infielders, and it's almost like they have a startle reflex. And we all know that. Like, if you're walking down the street and someone jumps out and they yell boo and you startle, it's interesting how many times you will see young infielders have that same reaction when the ball is hit to them. That is a clear indication that they were not ready for the ball. They were not saying to themselves on every single pitch of the game, the ball is coming to me. And unfortunately, that is something that does get, well, it does get better as kids get older, but I've even seen this at the major league level. So I have a story here. So several years ago, I was doing a coaching clinic, and the keynote speaker of the coaching clinic was a coach in the major leagues. His name was Nick Leva. Nick Leva has probably been a major league coach or manager for over 30 years. And I'm not even sure if he's still coaching or not, but just a gigantic career in baseball as a major league player first and then a coach. He's been in the game forever. So he was the keynote speaker. And so I introduced myself, and I was talking to him prior to him getting up there. And we were talking about a whole bunch of things. And a major league infielder's name came up. And it was a premier infielder at the time. And I had my thoughts on this infielder. But I wanted to know his point of view. So when the infielder's name was brought up, all I said to him was, "What are your thoughts on him?" And his immediate response was, "He takes too many pitches off." And that confirmed exactly what my feelings were towards this infielder. I had a couple opportunities to go to major league games and watch this infielder play, and he was, a premier. And I'm not going to give his name. It's not important, or who he played for. But a couple of games that I did go to, I for several innings, I did not take my eyes off the fielder. Okay, so like I said before, on that split step, where the infielder steps forward, lifts up on his toes, and then lands on every single pitch, I watched this infielder for probably 2 innings on every single pitch. And on every single pitch, he had his hands on his knees and didn't move. No split step, no raising on his toes and then down again. Just had his feet wide, hands on his knees, and did not move. There were times where the batter would hit a foul ball to the right or left, and all the infielders move because their first reaction is to go to where the ball is. He would not move. He just stood right there. To me, that is a clear indication that he is just not ready for the ball, or he just doesn't care. Well, apparently I wasn't the only one who noticed that, because the major league coach, who was also an infield instructor, Nick Leva, said the exact same. It was the first words out of his mouth was, he takes too many pitches off. And that's what that means. He's not mentally in the game on every single pitch. So, of course, we see that a lot with the younger ages. Their minds can drift, and that's just part of maturing. But this is something we see straight up through all levels of the game. You would think that premier infielders at the major league level and all of professional baseball would have this down pat, but unfortunately, many of them do. So you don't want any of your infielders to take pitches off. So here's what I would recommend for coaches to see how many of your infielders are doing this or not. So occasionally, either you do it or have another one of your coaches do this, where instead of following the pitch to the catcher, keep your eyes on your infielders, okay? It's because you can hear the ball hit the catcher's mitt, or you could hear the ball hit the bat. So you want to see how well they're timing this. You want to see how well they're timing their split step. But also, if the ball is hit, all 4 of your infielders should be moving to where the ball is. Their initial reflex reaction should be to break left or right, even for a step. So let's say the batter hits a ball foul off to the right side. All 4 infielders should do their correct split step at the same time, and then as soon as that ball is hit, which you can hear it, all 4 infielders should break immediately, maybe a step or so to their left, which is going to be towards the right field side. If you look out and all 4 of your infielders are doing that, then you know in their head they're saying the ball's coming to me, because they are ready. And as soon as that ball is hit, they react. If one of those infielders don't move when a ball is fouled off left or right, and they don't follow that ball for one step as a reflex, then they're not ready. They are not ready for the pitch, and they are probably not telling themselves that it's coming to them. Okay, so those are the 7. When we come back, I'll summarize those once again real quick, and it'll send you on your way. All right, I'll see you in a little bit. Okay, so let me quickly summarize those 7. Okay, highly effective infielders first have a perfect split step, and more importantly, the timing of it is perfect. Number 2 is they pay more attention to their pre-inning throws, make sure they do it with purpose, mechanically sound, and take some of those other considerations into account as well. Number 3 is always locking your eyes on the target before you let go of the baseball. Number 4 was do not depend on your teammates so much. Premier infielders, they always know where they are and where they need to be. They do not need their teammates to tell them that information. For number 5, premier infielders, always utilize that top hand. Not just because it's good fundamentals, but it calms the brain down, and they can keep that head down a little bit better in the process. The 6th one was always keeping your head behind the baseball. And the last one, number 7, is telling themselves that it is always coming to me. Okay, so I hope you learned something. Hopefully some of those things you already teach your players, but maybe the way I explained it, or maybe some of the ones that I mentioned, might be beneficial for you and or your players. Hey everybody, before you leave, if you like the show, you can be a big help when it comes to spreading the word. First, check out baseballbytheart.com. Be sure to subscribe and take what I call the 5-post challenge. Read any 5 of my blog posts, and I think you'll find that there's no baseball instructional website like it online. Second, check out the over 200 videos I've posted on YouTube for players and coaches. While you're there, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so that you're notified every time I post a new video. And lastly, like, comment, and leave a review on all these platforms to help other people get this information too. I'm Coach Bob McCreary. Thank you so much for your time, and best of luck on your baseball journey.